Imagine waking up one day and the world has fallen silent. Not the apocalyptic silence of an empty city, but a silence that is deeply, unnervingly personal. The phone on your nightstand, usually a frantic source of light and vibration, is dark, inert. Your inbox, a relentless river of demands and digital chatter, has run dry. The invitations, the group chats, the endless scroll of curated lives, all of it has ceased. It's not that the world has forgotten you. It's that you have, slowly and deliberately, unplugged yourself from the world. At first, the feeling is one of profound relief, a long, slow exhale you didn't even realize you were holding. You make your coffee, and the only sound is the hiss of the machine and the clink of ceramic. You look out the window, and you see the world moving on without you. Cars flowing like blood cells through the city's arteries, people hurrying to their destinations, but you feel no pull to join them. For the first time in years, there is no performance to rehearse, no mask to put on, no social energy to conjure from the depleted reserves of your soul. You have canceled your subscription to the approval of others. You were told your entire life that to be human is to be social. That connection is the bedrock of meaning, and loneliness is a barren void. Aristotle called us the social animal. Modern psychology reinforces it, measuring happiness in the richness of our relationships. And yet, in this self-imposed exile, you don't feel empty. You feel vast. The space once occupied by the noise of others is not a vacuum. It's a landscape. A quiet, sprawling territory that is, for the first time, entirely your own. But then, as days bleed into weeks, something shifts. The initial euphoria of liberation begins to curdle. The silence, once a peaceful sanctuary, starts to develop an echo. Your own thoughts, no longer drowned out by the external world, become deafeningly loud. The quiet moments are no longer serene. They are filled with a strange, buzzing static from within. The freedom you craved begins to feel like a different kind of cage. One without bars, but with walls made of your own consciousness. This is the great paradox of withdrawal. You stepped away from the crowd to finally meet yourself, only to discover that you may not like the company. You sought solitude to escape the judgment of others, but now you face a far more relentless critic, the one who lives inside your head. What is this force that makes the absence of others so intoxicating at first and so terrifying later? What if the self you perform for the world is not a lie, but a necessary anchor? And what if, in cutting it loose, you haven't freed yourself, but have instead become untethered, adrift in the cold, infinite space of your own mind? Are you healing, or are you disintegrating? Are you finding your true self, or are you losing the only self that ever knew how to survive? The hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounds like a discordant symphony. The drip of a faucet, a drumbeat counting down to an unknown verdict. You fled the tribe, believing you were a lion seeking the strength of solitude. But what if you are merely a stray, shivering in an alleyway, mistaking the cold for freedom? The world you left behind, the messy, demanding, exhausting world of people, was it a prison or was it a buffer? A necessary layer of noise that protected you from a much deeper, more terrifying silence within? You thought you were running from them, from their expectations, their drama, their incessant need for a piece of you. But as you sit in the stillness of your own making, a chilling realization begins to dawn. The voices you were trying to escape were never truly outside of you. They were recordings playing on a loop in your own skull. The judges, the critics, the audience, you've internalized them all. For you have not escaped the crowd. You have simply discovered that you carry it within you. And that, right there, is where the real problem begins. That internal crowd, the relentless chorus of judgment and expectation you carry within you. This isn't just a feeling, it's a mechanism, a deeply embedded psychological structure that has, until this point, governed the very architecture of your identity. To understand the profound shift you are experiencing, you must first understand what you have dismantled. You didn't just stop answering texts, you declared war on a fundamental component of your own psyche. The great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung had a name for the part of you that you've just executed: the persona. The persona is the mask of outward-facing personality that you present to the world. It is your curated self, the polished diplomat you send out to negotiate the complex, often treacherous terrain of society. It's the agreeable colleague, the charming friend, the responsible family member. It is not necessarily a lie, but it is an adaptation, a uniform you wear to belong, to be accepted, to be safe. For your entire life, you have mistaken this uniform for your skin. Socializing was the ritual that kept this persona alive, nourished by the validation, reactions, and reflections from others. It needed an audience to exist, but in your self-imposed silence, the audience has left the theater. The applause has stopped. The persona, deprived of its lifeblood, the gaze of the other, begins to wither. It cracks, peels, and flakes away. And what rushes into the vacuum is not the serene, authentic self you read about in self-help books. No, what emerges from the basement of your consciousness is everything the persona was designed to suppress. Jung called this the shadow. The shadow is the repository for all the parts of yourself you deemed unacceptable for public consumption. Your insecurities, your repressed aggressions, your secret shames, your unconventional desires, your profoundest fears. It is the wild, untamed animal that the social self had to cage. Now, with the zookeeper gone, the animal is rattling the bars. The deafening noise you hear in the silence, it is the clamor of the shadow, demanding to be seen. The relentless inner critic isn't some new demon. It is simply the voice of every judgment you ever feared, now coming from inside the house. This is the precise moment Friedrich Nietzsche warned us about. He saw society not as a collection of individuals, but as a herd. The herd provides warmth, safety, and a prepackaged set of values, a herd morality. It tells you what is good and what is evil, what to strive for and what to fear. It relieves you of the crushing burden of creating your own meaning. The persona is the embodiment of herd morality, the ultimate tool of conformity. By withdrawing from the world, you have stepped outside the herd. And while you may have imagined this as a heroic act of self-actualization, you are now discovering the terrifying truth. The shepherd is gone, the fence has vanished, and you are alone in a wilderness without a map. Nietzsche argued that to become a higher human, an Übermensch, one must overcome the herd instinct within. One must become one's own lawgiver. But this is not a gentle, blissful process. It is a violent and disorienting one. It requires staring into what he called the abyss, the void of meaning left when all external values are stripped away, and not flinching as the abyss stares back. The anxiety you feel is the vertigo of absolute freedom. You are no longer just following a path. You are a moral cartographer, forced to draw your own map on a blank, terrifying expanse, with ink made from your own blood and tears. The existentialists understood this terror intimately. Jean-Paul Sartre's infamous declaration, "Hell is other people," is often misunderstood as a simple complaint about annoying acquaintances, but its true meaning is far more profound and relevant to your current state. He meant that we often only know ourselves through the gaze of others. You see yourself as smart because people have told you so. You see yourself as kind because your actions have been reflected back to you with that label. Your identity has been outsourced, cobbled together from a million tiny reflections in the eyes of the crowd. You are a collage of perceived perceptions. When you remove the others, you remove the mirrors. You are left in a state of part and undefined potential, what Sartre called being condemned to be free. And in this state, the full weight of responsibility for creating your own essence falls squarely on you. There is no one to blame, no one to impress, no one to react to. There is only you and the terrifying, exhilarating burden of self-creation. The hell wasn't other people. The hell was your addiction to using them as a substitute for a self. So this is the hidden problem, the engine driving your internal chaos. You believed you were an individual moving through a society, but the psychological and philosophical truth is far more unsettling. You were a function of society that mistook itself for an individual. Your self was a social contract, and you have just violated its terms. The subsequent breakdown, the inner noise, the rising fear, The disorienting freedom is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that the deconstruction has begun. Your mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, is trying to rebuild you using the old, familiar blueprints of the herd. But a deeper, quieter part of you knows that those blueprints lead back to the very prison you just escaped. This is not just an emotional slump, it is an invisible civil war for the future of your soul. And the consequences of this war, unseen and unfelt by the outside world, are about to reshape your entire reality. As this internal civil war rages on, its effects begin to bleed into the fabric of your reality. These are not grand, dramatic events, but quiet, insidious shifts in your perception. They are the unseen consequences, the subtle ways this profound psychological recalibration begins to dismantle the world you thought you knew, brick by brick, until the very foundation of your life feels alien. You didn't just change your social habits, you altered the cognitive lens through which you view existence itself. First, you begin to notice the ghosts, not literal spirits, but the spectral residue of your former social self. You walk past a cafe where you used to meet a friend, and a pang of something unidentifiable hits you. It's not nostalgia, and it's not regret. It's the sensation of looking at a photograph of a stranger who happens to have your face. The laughter, the conversations, the shared moments, they feel like scenes from a film you watched long ago, whose plot you can no longer quite recall. The emotional attachments that once felt like solid ground now seem like chalk outlines on the pavement, fading with each passing day. This is a neurological phenomenon as much as a psychological one. Our brains are wired for social connection, creating intricate neural pathways dedicated to tracking relationships, interpreting social cues, and managing our reputation. Neuroscientists speak of the social brain, a network of regions including the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction. This network is like a muscle. For years, you gave it a constant, rigorous workout. Now, in the silence, it is atrophying. The cognitive biases that helped you navigate the social world are losing their power. Take the spotlight effect, the pervasive feeling that everyone is watching and judging your every move. It's a cognitive bias that kept your persona in check, ensuring your behavior aligned with group norms. In your solitude, the spotlight has been unplugged. You find yourself doing things without the familiar hum of imagined scrutiny. You wear mismatched socks, not as an act of rebellion, but because the mental energy required to care has simply evaporated. You talk to yourself out loud, not out of loneliness, but because the internal censor, the part of you that policed your behavior for an imagined audience, has been furloughed. But the decay of this social machinery has a darker side. Your ability to empathize, to mentalize, to read others begins to dull. You see a news story about a distant tragedy, and where you once felt a pang of collective grief, you now feel a detached, analytical coolness. You scroll past a friend's joyful announcement online, a wedding, a new baby, and the reflexive flicker of shared happiness is gone. In its place is a void. This isn't cruelty, it's a consequence of disuse. Empathy, like a language, requires practice. Without the daily immersion in the lives of others, you are forgetting how to speak it. You are becoming a foreigner in the country of human emotion. This detachment begins to warp your perception of time. When your life was structured around social appointments, dinners, meetings, parties, time was a linear, segmented thing. It had rhythm and pace, dictated by external obligations. Now, time has become a thick, viscous fluid. Days lose their names. The boundary between Tuesday and Saturday dissolves. Your sleep cycle drifts, untethered from the conventional 9-to-5 world. You are living in what cultural anthropologists might call dream time, a state where the chronological clock is replaced by the rhythms of your own body and consciousness. This can feel liberating, but it is also profoundly disorienting. You are untethered from the collective pulse of humanity, floating in your own private temporal zone. The most profound consequence, however, is the mutation of your own identity. You used to define yourself with social labels, a good friend, a dedicated employee, a member of a certain group. These were the pillars of your self-concept. Now they lie in ruins. When you are no longer reflected in the eyes of others, who are you? The question hangs in the silent air of your apartment, heavy and unanswerable. You look in the mirror, and the face that stares back is increasingly unfamiliar. The expressions it used to make, the practiced smile, the concerned frown, seem like affectations. This is the unseen trap of your withdrawal. You thought you were on a quest for the real you, a solid, singular core of being that was waiting to be discovered. But you are finding what philosophers like David Hume suspected all along. There may be no core. When we look inside, we find only a bundle of different perceptions, which succeed each other with an inconceivable rapidity and are in a perpetual flux and movement. The self was not a thing to be found, but a story to be told. And your story was co-authored by everyone you ever knew. Now, the co-authors are gone, Saan. The narrative has faltered. You are left with a collection of fragmented scenes, disconnected thoughts, and fading memories. The panic that begins to set in is not the fear of loneliness. It is the existential terror of non-existence. The fear that in trying to peel away the mask, you discovered there was nothing underneath. You are a ghost haunting the rooms of your own life, trapped in an invisible prison of absolute, undefined freedom. The world moves on, oblivious, while you are locked in a silent, desperate struggle to prove to yourself that you are still there. The terror you feel is real. The disorientation is a signpost. But it is not, as you might fear, a signpost for insanity. It is a landmark on a very old and rarely trodden path. This feeling of disintegration is not the end of the journey. It is the harrowing, necessary price of admission to the next stage. The temptation now is to run back, to frantically text old friends, to RSVP, yes, to everything, to plunge back into the warm, numbing waters of the herd. That would be a retreat, a surrender. The rebellion begins not by running back, but by pushing forward, deeper into the storm. It begins with a radical shift in perspective. You have been operating under a false premise. You believed your task was to find your true self. You imagined it as a hidden statue, a perfect form buried beneath the rubble of social conditioning, waiting to be excavated. This is the great lie of the modern self-help narrative. The solution is not excavation, but creation. This is the core of Nietzsche's challenge. He did not say, find thyself. He commanded, become who you are. This is not a passive discovery. It is an active, artistic, and often brutal act of will. You are not an archaeologist digging for a pre-existing artifact. You are a sculptor, and the raw, unformed block of marble is this terrifying, undefined freedom you are now experiencing. The cane, so the internal noise, the shadows roar. This is not a flaw in the material. This is the material. Your rebellion is to pick up the hammer and chisel. So how do you begin? The first step is counterintuitive. You do not try to silence the inner noise. You listen to it. You give the shadow a seat at the table. For too long, your persona acted as a bouncer, violently ejecting any thought or feeling deemed unacceptable. Now you must become a different kind of host. Carl Jung's process of individuation was precisely this, a conscious, deliberate integration of the shadow. You must look at your envy, your anger, your shame, not with judgment, but with a kind of ruthless curiosity. Ask them questions. What are you afraid of? What do you want? What injustice do you scream about? You will find that your envy is often a distorted signpost pointing toward a repressed desire. Your anger is a fierce guardian of a boundary that has been violated. Your shame is the echo of a herd-imposed value you never consciously chose to accept. By engaging with these disowned parts, you are not surrendering to them. You are reclaiming the immense energy that has been wasted on suppressing them. This is the alchemical process of turning lead into gold. You are transmuting the dark, chaotic energy of the shadow into conscious, directed power. The second act of rebellion is to reclaim your focus. Your mind, conditioned by the social world, is a marketplace of distractions, constantly seeking external validation. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer saw this as a primary source of human misery, living for the opinion of others, which he called a slave's existence. To break free, you must cultivate what he might call an intellectual fortress. This is the practice of deep, solitary work. Choose a single difficult thing and pour your newly reclaimed energy into it. It could be learning a complex skill, engaging with a challenging book, creating a piece of art, or even mastering the physical discipline of your own body. This is not a hobby to pass the time. It is a forging ground. When you are immersed in a state of deep focus or flow, the inner critic falls silent. The need for external validation evaporates. In these moments, you are not thinking about who you are simply being. Your identity is no longer a fragile concept to be debated, but a tangible reality demonstrated through action. As the Zen masters say, the way to do is to be. In the act of creation, you create yourself. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, built his entire philosophy of logotherapy on this principle. Meaning is not something you find within yourself, but something you create through a commitment to a task, a cause, or another person. In your solitude, the task is your salvation. Finally, the rebellion requires a new relationship with the world. You did not leave society to become a hermit forever. You retreated to rebuild your ship. Now you must learn to sail it differently. The goal is not to return to the herd, but to interact with the world on your own terms. This means choosing your connections with fierce intentionality. Think of the historical figures who embodied this. Leonardo da Vinci was famously solitary, jealously guarding his time for his work, yet his interactions changed the course of history. Nikola Tesla spent vast amounts of time in deep, isolated thought, emerging with revolutionary ideas that he then had to bring to a skeptical world. They were not antisocial, they were selectively social. They did not allow the world to dictate their worth or their schedule. Their interactions were purposeful, not reflexive. This is your new model. When you do choose to reconnect, do so not out of neediness or fear of being alone, but from a position of strength and fullness. You share your time not because you are empty without others, but because you have something of value to offer. You seek conversation not for validation, but for the genuine exchange of ideas. You are no longer a beggar seeking scraps of approval from the tables of others. You are a host, inviting a select few into the world you have built within yourself. This is the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the poverty of self. Solitude is the richness of self. Your rebellion is the journey from the former to the latter. It is the hard-won freedom to say no to the world, so that your yes finally has meaning. You have walked through the fire. You've faced the disorienting silence, wrestled with the shadow, and begun the arduous work of self-creation. You have started to build a fortress within, one not made of stone walls to keep the world out, but of self-generated meaning to keep your center intact. And now, standing amidst the quiet hum of this new reality, you are ready for the final, most powerful realization. It is an insight so profound that it reframes everything you have endured. All the pain, the fear, the existential vertigo, it all suddenly clicks into place, revealing a breathtakingly beautiful and terrifying truth about your place in the universe. The ultimate truth is this: you did not withdraw from the world to find yourself. You withdrew from the world to forget yourself. This is the final paradigm-shattering paradox. The entire journey, the focus on the self, the battle with the shadow, the creation of a new identity, was a necessary intermediate stage. It was a scaffold you had to build. But now you realize that the scaffold itself is not the building. The ultimate freedom is not found in perfecting the self, but in transcending it entirely. For what is this self you have been working so hard to define and defend? It is still fundamentally a story, a more robust, more authentic, more resilient story to be sure, but a story nonetheless. It is a construct of the mind, a focal point for your consciousness, a character you've been method acting into existence. And as long as you identify with this character, you remain trapped. You have simply exchanged the large, noisy prison of the herd for a smaller, more elegant, custom-built cell of your own design. The silence you cultivated was never meant to be a chamber for endless self-reflection. It was an entryway. It was a tool to quiet the external noise so that you could finally hear a much deeper, subtler signal, the one that has been present all along, drowned out by the chatter of both society and the ego. Imagine standing on the shore of a vast ocean. At first, your attention is on the chaotic, crashing waves near the beach. This is the noise of the social world. As you retreat from it, you notice the powerful currents and undertows beneath the surface. This is the realm of the shadow and the personal ego. But if you sit long enough, if you become truly still, you begin to perceive something else. The immense, silent, rhythmic pulse of the entire ocean. The tide. It is a force that is not separate from the waves or the currents, but is the underlying reality that gives birth to them all. You are not the wave. You are not the current. You are the ocean. This is the great realization spoken of in different languages by mystics, philosophers, and poets throughout history. The Stoics called it living in accordance with logos, the universal reason that permeates all of existence. In the East, it is the realization of anatta, or no self, in Buddhism, and the unity of Atman, the individual soul, with Brahman, the universal consciousness, in Hinduism. It is Ralph Waldo Emerson's transparent eyeball, where he declared, "I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or parcel of God." Your withdrawal from society was the first step in a process of disillusionment. First, you were disillusioned with the world of others. Then you were disillusioned with the self you thought you were. The final step is to become disillusioned with the very idea of a separate self altogether. Suddenly, the world transforms. You look out your window and you no longer see you looking at a tree. The sense of separation dissolves. There is only seeing. There is only the tree, the light, the air, and the consciousness perceiving it, all part of one seamless, flowing reality. The anxiety you felt was the friction of a small, separate self trying to navigate a world it believed was other. The fear of death was the terror of a single wave believing its existence ends when it crashes on the shore, forgetting it is and always will be part of the ocean. This is Nietzsche's ultimate unspoken message. Become who you are was not the final destination. It was the training. You had to become a strong, sovereign individual first. You had to forge a will powerful enough to stand alone. Why? Because only a self that is strong enough to exist on its own can then have the courage to let itself go. You cannot renounce a self you have never possessed. You had to build the ego before you could sacrifice it. This is the ultimate freedom. It is not the freedom to do whatever you want. It is the freedom from the you that wants. It is the peace that comes from no longer needing the world to validate you because you have realized you are not separate from it. Your actions are no longer driven by the desires of a frightened ego, but become expressions of the universal current flowing through you. Your creativity is not yours. It is life itself creating through you. Your love is not a transaction between two separate beings. It is the universe's own inherent tendency toward connection, expressing itself through your form. You may re-engage with the world, you may socialize, but you will do so as an entirely different being. You will be in the world, but not of it. You will play the game, wear the persona when necessary, but you will never again forget that it is a costume. You will see the desperation, the fear, and the posturing in others not with judgment, but with a deep, aching compassion. For you see in them the same struggle you once endured. You see waves crashing violently, terrified of their own dissolution, unaware of their oceanic nature. Your life is no longer a frantic effort to build a legacy or prove your worth. It is a dance, a brief, beautiful, and utterly magnificent expression of a cosmic intelligence that is infinitely larger than the small story of you. You stopped socializing, and in the deafening silence that followed, you lost the world. You lost yourself, and in doing so, you gained everything. You finally woke up.